I'm a nobody from nowhere that ain't never done nothing. That's what I am. An old head. These young coaches, I tell you what, I can't figure these jokers out. They got a backpack on and tight something. I don't know what they're doing. They're getting on my nerves, I can tell you that. I know what ain't in the backpack. A string and a let me paint that line for you. That ain't in there. That's for sure. I had a kid the other day. He said, "Hey, Coach, didn't Christopher Columbus write the Pledge of Allegiance?" I said he sure did. He also played quarterback for the 1985 Chicago Bears. He said, "Bet." That happened. Sun Coaches, Season 6, where coaches come and tell their stories. Some of them are funny. Some of them is going to help you in your coaching journey. Not everybody has a funny story, but everybody has a story. Hope you enjoy Sun Coaches, brought to you by Titan Sensor. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sensor for Season 6 and 7. Titan is made in the USA, proudly founded and based in Texas. When you connect with Titan, you are not alone. You can collaborate and share templates with other coaches across the country to build reports and foster competition. Used by programs such as State 6A Georgia State champion Grayson High School, Titan can tailor a package to fit your needs. The eye in the sky never lies. Improve your team's performance with Titan. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear the stories this guy's got for us today. From Eastman, Georgia, he's now the head coach at Riverside Prep. Coach Jeff Lee, thanks for being on with us.
Chris, buddy, man, I appreciate that. Appreciate that intro, man. This is quite an honor going all the way back from them days when you were a ghost on the internet out there. People didn't know who you were. So how does this guy get all this information and all that? But yeah, you were an anomaly yourself, buddy. So even before this.
Oh well, I think I'm probably still an anomaly. Especially most people who actually meet me and know me are like, "You're very underwhelming." Yeah, I'm a nobody from nowhere that's never done anything. So there's that. So
but you headed to the red town though. You headed to Dodge County. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. So you're from you grew up in Dodge County. Are you actually from Eastman, or are you from one of the outlying little communities?
Little communities that no, I'm born and raised there in Eastman, right there. I only think it was a health office now, but it was a hospital. Born and raised in Eastman, Georgia, and graduated in 1980 from Dodge County High School, and it was a great place to grow up, man. It was. We could get on a bicycle and go downtown with a quarter and get your Coke and your bag of candy and your cinnamon bun, whatever you wanted, RC Cola, and that was fun. We thought that was the greatest thing. And really nobody locked the doors. Our phone numbers were 4 digits. I mean, it was, like 7711, and that was it. That's all you dialed. And then they added the 4. Then they added the 3 numbers. So it was a very, very simple way of growing up, and we loved it. That's all we did was play sports until we got old enough to work, and nothing for us to go down and have a pickup game at the park and rec and have our own no catching gear, 1 bat and 1 ball, and right field was always dead.
That's right.
And they played plastic ball in the Bear's backyard, and we just played sports and got outside. And summertime it was 9:30, 10 o'clock, and they told you to come in. You came in and ate and went to bed, and we did it all over again. But I tell you what, it was fun growing up there.
Home of the original Stuckies.
That's it, buddy. That's it, man. And now it's up in Nashville. Neil Spradlin and them had bought that thing, and now they got that thing up in Nashville, and it is now the Goo clusters up there now. But yeah, and I worked at Stuckies for 1 summer loading trucks, and I said, man, I got to get an education. When I was one of them summer jobs home, I said, I won't be doing this the rest of my life. I got to stay in school. So what
all did you play in high school?
I was very fortunate. I played baseball and some football, played baseball up to my senior year. And I don't think I was very good because Coach Phil Lanford was my junior, senior year. I had to mention these guys. We had Troy Jones, and you're going to find out about Troy when you're there. But Troy was there for a long time, and Jerry Raines came in. But then my junior year, we had Larry Green and Phil Lanford and Mickey Lindsay, all those guys came in from South Florida, from North Florida. They came in there and turned the whole program around and actually got us. They were used to weightlifting and things like that, and having weightlifting classes. It totally changed. We had no weight room at the time, and we had plastic buckets with a steel rod in it. And I remember they had one measure painted on there, weighed 171 pounds. And I said, I can't wait to lift that. And well, by junior year, I got to lift it. But finally, we got a weight room. We actually helped build the addition to the weight room and got it in there. And, man, we lifted and ran those bleachers out there at the stadium. And they turned the whole play. They got us working hard. But it was a good group of guys. My senior year, we had 22. We had 22 seniors. 11 of us had an opportunity to get offered to go on and play at the next level. And very fortunate out of that group that 3 of us actually got on and go play past college ball a little bit. And but that was real. That was a special group. Out of that group, man, Wes Taylor, who was superintendent down at Lowndes County, has done a great name for himself. Theory Ward played with me at Georgia Southern. Jimmy Harper played at Georgia and played for the Cowboys. And Theory actually was in Birmingham in the USFL with me. And it was just it was a good group of kids that worked so doggone hard. And back then there was only one team going to make it to the playoffs, and we lost 2 games. I'll never forget, we played Dublin High School. They beat us 6-0 there, and in Eastman. And that night, the stadium was full. They had everybody standing. They were just standing all over the end zone. There wasn't a place to be seen. My uncle, Raleigh Jackson, was a Warner Robins Demon fanatic, and he was president of the Booster Club. Never, ever, ever missed a Warner Robins football game. Well, him and 3 of his buddies missed a Warner Robins football game to come watch that game. I think we were 4th in the state, and Dublin was 7th that night. And it was just a phenomenal night. But that was the type of atmosphere we had. We lost to Americus on the last play of the game. Next to last play, Emmanuel King took it. I said it's 101, which would have brought it back, but he took it 99 yards and on the kickoff, and we had just taken the lead, and we'd never beaten Americus, and they wound up beating us 24-21, and they advanced. Him and Dublin did to play in the playoffs. But it was great, man. I loved it playing there, and I wasn't that good. Tell me what impact coaches have. Dale Jones was he's passed now, but Dale Jones was my 9th grade football coach. And up on the hill at Dodge County, the practice field, we had a cinder block building with chicken wire, and that was our locker room. And it was drafty, and winter it was cold, it was hot in the summer. But I'll never forget, I was a bag holder. I was 5'7", 140 pounds, 9th grade. I was a bag holder, and we were going to play West Lawrence the last game of the season. And I thought I was going to get to play. Just didn't know, back then, he was just trying to exist. I lived 3 blocks from the school, so I knew if the game was, as soon as the practice was over, I'd just walk myself down the hill and be home. And so he comes in and he says, guys, we're getting ready to leave. I hate to tell you this, but West Lawrence don't have enough to play, and we're not going to be able to play this game. And man, I dropped my head. I don't know, and it got quiet. My dad left me. He left our family back when I was getting into what was junior high back then. So sports became very important to me, and coaches men in my life, and that was affecting me. And Dale Jones was sitting there. He says, guys, I hate it, but I really hate it for a particular person in this room, and that's Jeff Lee. He said, I wouldn't have gave you a dime for him when he started, but he has been here every day, and he was going to start, and that was what, he hated the most. And man, my chest rolled up, and I said, holy cow, man has taught positivity into my life. And that just meant the world to me. And he wrote me a letter. He left there, but I went to Georgia Southern and went on playing a little bit. He wrote me a letter about every year, just telling how much he was proud of me. And then I had to thank him for what he meant to me and saying those words. But, Phil Lamford was in my life here in high school. He was my offensive line coach, and he was the one that came to me in baseball and said, look, he said, you could coach first base. How about that? And he said, just get the signals down. He said, you go get in the weight room and you get better, and because you got an opportunity to go play college football. And later on in life, I got back with him. I actually lived with him and his wife for a little bit and job transition. He cracked me up. He says, really and truly, you were pretty good. He says, but I didn't want you to miss this opportunity about, getting stronger, and I needed to do that. But man, those high school guys were just phenomenal in my life. And I knew then what the passion I wanted to do.
So when you got out of high school, you went to Georgia Southern, straight to Georgia Southern?
No, I was recruited by actually the film. We had an accident. I ain't gonna get into all that, but I got moved from tackle to center against Dublin, and that happened on Wednesday. And high school kids, especially as illiterate football as I was about knowledge of football, Lanford took me over to his house and Wednesday night, Thursday night, says you got to learn how to play center. I was scared to death, and had to play against a nose tackle from Dublin that went to South Carolina. But I tell you what, I crab blocked his rear end off all night long, and that was the film that actually sent off on to college, and that's what got me recruited. And I wound up going to Livingston University, but now that's the West Alabama now, and Division II school in the Gulf South Conference, and went there my first year. And, came home, was gonna play with a lot of guys. You don't know if you remember the name Charles Too Mean Martin. Remember that guy?
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that ended Jim McMahon's career.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had to tell you a quick story. We get out and we're going to first scrimmage, and we're freshmen. And I wasn't worried about playing. I was like, third team center. I was going to be scout team center all year. I wasn't worried about it. We're just enjoying it. I said, man, beautiful sunshine. We're on the sideline. Get out there and anyway, I saw this guy in the weight room one time, Charles Martin, and Livingston had a facility that was not well kept at the time, and he was over benching almost 500 pounds. I was oh my gosh, that guy's a freak, just massive. Well, I said, it's a good thing I won't have to go against him. He plays defensive end. Well, we get out there to first scrimmage and go, and Coach Joe DeAlessanders, who just passed away, he was the offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens recently, but he was my offensive line coach, and he got out there and he yelled for another guy to come out, and I'd watch the play stop. We're sitting there just having a good time. We're freshmen. We're talking about, man, what we going to do this week? It's our first weekend. Next series, they run out there, and he calls. He says, Lee, get in here. I go, oh, gosh. So I'm putting my helmet on, double bladder bike helmet, put that thing on, run out there, get in the huddle, get in here. I'll tell you what to do. He puts me a tackle. And I didn't start to think, put one and one together, so I didn't worry about it. He says, set high. Cut him if he gets upfield, it's a pass. I said, break the huddle. I get down in my stance. I look up, and these big old paws are in front of me. And I look up, and it was Charles Martin. I said, oh, my gosh. So I sat high. He took his hand, knocked me down. I wasn't strong. And they said he literally took his knee and kicked me in the head. Next thing I know, I'm on the sideline. There's all three of us. The way I got in, all three of us had concussions. And it was about Charles Too Mean Martin. So, but anyway, no, I was going to go back to Livingston, and got home, and my mom, single mom, and she was a teacher's aide. So I drove her down. I was working construction there at the Bank of Eastman, redoing that whole wall there. And I had to have the car. So I took her down to Georgia Southern. I didn't know much about Georgia Southern. I knew it was down there. And walk in and drop her off at the dorm. And I started to walk out, and down by the side right there, the Georgian newspaper, Georgia Southern newspaper was there. And I looked down and it says, Georgia Southern starting football, and Erk Russell was the head coach. And this was like in June or so. And I said, oh, my gosh. I looked around. It was free. I looked around to make sure nobody was looking. So I took it. It was free anyway, and read that thing. I said, oh, my gosh. So I got home. That was Sunday afternoon. And I dialed 411 for information and got Georgia Southern's athletic department. And I came home at lunch when I was working that Monday. And I called down there, and Sue Colson, who was secretary to Coach Russell forever, answered the phone. And I said, I explained my situation. She said, well, I'll give him his number. When's a good time to call you? I said, at least 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, the phone rang, and it was Erk Russell on the other line. And I said, oh, my gosh. I didn't expect him to call me, really. And we had a conversation. He says, look, we had no money at Georgia Southern. He said, I can't offer you nothing. Everybody's walking on, and you make sure you talk to Livingston first. He said, well, we're having a softball tournament to raise money for football program. And I go, softball back then, that's what everybody did, that or donkey basketball or donkey softball, So we get down there, I pick my mom up. I said, Mom, you ain't gonna believe this. I said, Erk Russell's and them. She said, who? I said, they start football at Georgia. So, because I hadn't talked to her all week, and go by and she said, he wants us to come by. So in between innings, he came out, introduced himself, and went back to his double wide trailer, which was his coaching office at Georgia Southern, and shaved up and came, and we ate at Snooki's. Bruce Yon was the owner, and he played for Coach Russell and them up there at Georgia. And he came out, and we sat and talked, and it was just, that man, Coach Russell, it was just like talking to your grandfather. And it was awesome. And then I'll tell you a little quick story. So Bruce comes over and he says, "Hey, coach, this might be our first paid recruit right here." And he says, "Well, it might be." So he took the tab, and I was sitting here just thinking real quick. I wasn't real smart then, but I just said, "Mr. Yarn, can I have that?" And he said, "Sure." He said, "Coach, you mind signing that?" And that was one of those things that I thought off quick. I was proud of myself for. So that was pretty neat there, and I was sold. We walked on at Georgia Southern, and we had 141 kids that first day of practice, and 7 of us out of that 141, only 7 of us made it through 4 years together. And it's kind of a story that's not told a lot because they kind of pick it up right after we graduated. And anyway, it was fun, man. We saw beautiful Eagle Creek get its name and how it got its name, and we played at Womack Field. And I was there when we pushed the tree over on the corner at Paulson Stadium when it was nothing but a creek in a big old wooded area. And now that place is just unbelievable. There was 4,000 students at Georgia Southern when we got there. I think it was 6 when I graduated in '84. And our first year in Division I AA, we wound up getting as high as 7th in the nation, and we had to win 1 or 2 on the road. We were 8-1, and we lost to East Tennessee in the Dome and Middle Tennessee the last game, and finished 8-3 and didn't make it. But then the rest is history because they won back-to-back national championships after that. But just great. Georgia Southern was great for me. That was the perfect time. I think I would have sat on the bench at Livingston for a while, and eventually would have played. But I was able to stand in and be a 4-year starter, and it was right timing. I mean, that staff, I thought about that staff and the people. Hugh Nall is still a friend of mine. I can call him a friend. He was my offensive line coach. Some days I didn't think he loved us. I didn't think he liked us at all very much. But Hugh Nall was a great. Pat McShay was there. Ricky McBride, Scott Warner, Al Pollard. Just all kind of guys that played for Georgia and played for Coach Russell and knew he was that kind of guy that Georgia Southern would not have accomplished what it has done if Coach Erk Russell had not been the guy. If it had been somebody else, it wouldn't have been. He could go in to a millionaire, Chris, in a bank and get his money. He could go to a millionaire farmer on a tractor, overalls, and get his money and to help because he could sell it. And he was truthful. And But that was fun, man. Tracy Ham coming in. Tracy made us look real good running the flex bone. The story goes also with Southern is that my senior year, we were running what Georgia ran. And we ran the I and everything and junkyard dog defense and the whole thing that Coach Russell ran. Well, Paul Johnson came in and Ben Griffith and him, they go out to Mouse Davis out for the Houston Gamblers in the USFL. And Jim Kelly was the quarterback then and for the Gamblers, and they were running the run and shoot, which is the flex bone offense formation. And Coach Russell had drawn up the wishbone as the hardest play to stop series because he had to stop Bear Bryant, Chuck Jordan at Auburn. He had to stop all those guys. And doggone it, if the next day we come in there and they told Mike Mears was a tight end transfer from Kent State. And he told him, he said, "Look, you're going to have to go to center. We're taking all the tight ends out of the offense. And we're going to this flex bone and we're going on triple." And then the rest is history because the Johnson men took off with it. And, it was fun playing down there, but I was there at the right time. That meant that the good Lord was looking after me. And he said, "Look, there's going to come a time when you're going to have to move and get uncomfortable." And it was. But I love it. I love that place down there. I love being part of Georgia Southern.
Yeah, one of my best coaching buddies, one of my favorite people I ever worked with, his daddy was your athletic director, Bucky Wagner, Mike Wagner.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Old Buckethead's one of my favorite.
Buckethead.
One of my favorite humans ever.
Hey, man, Bucky Wagner got that with Coach Russell. We didn't have a football to begin with, so they ran a Kmart across the street over and got the football when we first started, so they could do the press conference with Coach Russell. And Mike came on there, and he was with us, and then he got a championship ring out of the end of that. He was younger than us, but stay in touch with Mike all the time, and it was, like I said, Statesboro and Georgia Southern meant a lot to me, and it still does. That GATA lifestyle that I try to tell these guys about, it's not just a 4-letter word that you say when you play. It's a lifestyle, and you got to live that. And that's what's been fun about that.
So what'd you do after Georgia Southern?
Man, I tell you what, back in the day before my daddy left us, I can't remember what year it was. It was when Bob Lee was and the Atlanta Falcons, the Grits Blitz, were playing at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. They're playing the Minnesota Vikings, the first time they'd ever been on ABC TV. Monday Night Football. That was a big deal, but it came on at 9 o'clock. Howard Cosell, Dandy Don, all those guys. I remember turning around. My mom let me stay up, and it was going to be a late game, but I'd love the Falcons. And I told her, I said, just let me stay on. So we did. My daddy was dozing off, but I turned around and told him one time, I said, Daddy, I said, I'm going to play in that stadium, and I'm going to play for the Atlanta Falcons. And of course, that's just a kid's dream. That's your team, and so that passed, and I just held it to my heart. And got to Georgia Southern and played, and NFL came and did. I didn't know combine, but they came by and did all the campus deals, and I was too slow or not big enough, not good enough. And so over Christmas break, Coach Russell calls me and said, "Hey, there's a Orlando Renegades, and they're starting a team in the USFL." And I called the real USFL because it was pretty cool back then. And he said, "Are you interested?" And they're going to take in a territorial selection. They had draft and a territorial selection. They had an X number of schools that they would take. And so I said, "Heck yeah, I'll go." And he says, "Well, it doesn't guaranteed. You got to go down there and make the team." So, and Lee Corso is going to be the head coach. And so I said, "Oh my gosh, man." I said, and I didn't know much about Lee Corso by then because I was back in about the 85 mark. And so anyway, go down and lo and behold, I keep making these cuts and then made it. Back then we were on a quarter system in school. And so I made it all the way through winter quarter and it kept me, and then I got cut. So I got cut in spring. I came back and went to Coach Russell and said, "I got these grades, these classes." And he says, "Let me see what I can do." So they finagled to get me through summer, got me into summer. And I told him, I said, "Coach, I want to coach college football." And he says, "Well, there's one thing you got to do." He says, "You don't need to coach here right now because you're too close to all these guys. You've been here 4 years with them. They elected you permanent team captain. You need to go learn something else and then come back." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, I got you over at Valdosta State as a GA with Jim Berryman and them." And I said, "All right." I graduated. I think it was like the last of July. On Saturday, I was supposed to be at the meeting at 7 o'clock Sunday morning. So I drove my old mustard truck across the state there and got in the dorm. I had no lights and stayed in the dorm. And I was the first one there because I was so nervous. I didn't know what I was going to do. Wound up being coaching tackles under Johnny Mac Hollinger, who wound up going to Texas, El Paso. But coached that ball there for a year, and I kind of quickly realized that I might not want to coach college football at that level because we had no budget. And I'll never forget a recruiting trip. We were off one week, and David Napier and I drove up to North Georgia, and we practiced Thursday, and we had to be at one of the schools, Rockdale County, I think it was. No, Cedartown. We had to be at Cedartown on Friday morning when the door opened. So we drove all night, didn't have no money, just the money that we had ourselves. And we spent the night in the car Friday night. We saw playoff games on Friday and Saturday, turned around, drove back, had a meeting Sunday. And it was tough coming back home. And I told David, "I don't know if I want to do this right." I said, "I don't know if this Division II," and now it's totally changed. I mean, it's totally different, but that was a harder time. And at the end of the season, they fired Coach Berryman and them, and they came to us and the three GAs, Jim Lindsay and David Napier and I, and they asked us, "Would y'all run the program until we get, the weightlifting and all the mat drills and all that?" And we said, "Heck yeah, we want to stay." And so they had hired Mike Cavan. Mike Cavan came in and was the head coach there then. And the phone rang one day on January. I picked it up, and it was it said, "This is Tim Ruskell." And Tim Ruskell was player personnel director in Orlando. He was also player personnel director that year in Tampa Bay with Bandits with Coach Spurrier. He was called about one of our players. And I said, "Well, this is Jeff Lee. I coached Don, I coached him at the tackles." And he said, "Who'd you say this was?" I said, "Jeff Lee." He said, "The same one that played in Orlando for a little while?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "This is a player personnel director, the guy that signed you." I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, how you doing?" He says, how much shape are you?" And I said, "Well, I've been weightlifting and running, but I'm not in football shape." He says, "I got a free agent tryout next weekend. You interested?" And I didn't know what I was going to do, to be honest with you. And I said, "Yeah, I'll come down there." So I drove down with Don, actually, and made the team. And then we were transitioning to a fall schedule because Donald Trump and them thought we could, go to the fall and compete against NFL TV rights. And that was the whole deal. The league needed money. And Donald was the owner of the New Jersey Generals. And so we go down there and love playing for Coach Spurrier. And that was fun. He was a player's guy. And Tell you a quick story about that down there, man. Nate Newton wound up making it to the NFL. He played for the Dallas Cowboys. So Nate was a huge guy. I mean, he was big and strong. And he's one of the dudes that just didn't have to work out very much. We're sitting in the locker room. We're the last ones to leave, like usual, as offensive linemen. And Nate looks at me, he says, "Lee, where are you from?" And I said, "Eastman, Georgia." And he says, he paused a minute. He goes, He said, I said, "It's near Macon, Georgia." He said, "Yeah, that's near Fort Valley State." And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And he said, "I played at FAMU. We would play for Florida State." And he paused a minute. And he goes, "That's a 3-bucket ride." I said, "3 buckets? What you mean?" He said, "It'll take me 3 Kentucky Fried Chicken buckets to get there from here." So. He was a trip, though, man. He was something else. He played with a wide receiver face mask. He didn't play with a lineman. He was different. But the league folded, and I had no job. And my mom calls me. I was on back then it was a payphone, and we were all about 5 of us in an apartment. And she said, "Well, what you gonna do?" I said, "Well, I ain't gonna make it to the NFL. They taking guys left and right." And I said, "I don't think we're gonna try to go to the fall, Mom. I think we're gonna try to make it. So what you gonna do? I have to get a job." So our plan was to stick it out. The Bandits' plan was to stick it out and go into the fall as an expansion team. We didn't know much of it. Our world was real big back then. It wasn't small like it is now, as far as the knowledge. And so we were going to stick it out and stay. We're in there lifting one day, and our training site was at Hillsbury Community College, which is right across from Raymond James Stadium. And that was our training site. And we're sitting there one day, and the sports information guy comes in and says, "Guys, y'all, we're going to have to leave. They're going to take the weights." And I said, "Who's taking the weights?" They back up with this big old tractor trailer truck. And these guys start taking all the weights. And Newton looked at me and said, "I'm out of here. That's it." And what had happened was Scott Case played for the Atlanta Falcons, played defensive back, but he had signed originally with the Bandits. And they owed him $100,000 something. Back then, 85, 86, that was a lot of money. And so that's how they were getting their money. They took all the weights. We didn't have none. So I called Mom up. I said, "Hey, I need a job." So there was a job in Chester, Georgia, at Chester Junior High. And that was a K through 8. And I was the only male on staff. Pole barn gym. I learned to wax the floor and shine the floor. Was head boys basketball, girls basketball, hit football all by myself. Enjoyed every doggone minute of it. It was fun. And back then, you're about to find out Dodge County had about 6 or 7 of those units, and they all played each other in the league. And so was there, helped out the high school team. Neil Rumble was the coach there at the high school, and Daryl Fennerin was an assistant. And I played with Daryl for a while at Georgia Southern. I helped them out, and Friday night, and I knew I wanted to coach high school ball then. I mean, I forget the college thing. This is what I wanted to do. And Neil left that year, and they brought in Buddy Childs. And then Buddy came in and moved me up to the high school level. I was a weight strength coach and golf. And I'm not like you now. You got a pretty good golf game. I made sure. I said, "Buddy, I don't know anything about golf." He said, "Make sure you have transportation, make sure they got matches, and make sure they got the food they need." And I did that well. We won, I think, we're stuck in the region that year. But I didn't. It was fun. That was fun. Bobby Sly was the golf pro then, and Bobby came out. He had helped me a lot. And I told Bobby, "Look, man, all I need to do is help get them the matches." And so we did that, and that was fun. And was the story I told you back when I told my daddy that, what I wanted to do. And so that came true in 87. 1987, the strike happened in the NFL. And I'll never forget, we were sitting there talking to my buddies and on the phone, and we would talk to each other and go, "Yeah, man, they're going to call you. Yeah, they're going to call you." And we were just joking and everything. Well, we played Coffee County. We got beat 6-3 on a field goal late. And we were all open that week. And it was Tuesday, because they played a Monday night football game. Tuesday, the phone rings in the office. I go pick it up right there where the weight room is. And I said, "Dodge County football, can I help you?" And he said, "I'm trying to get Jeff Lee." And I said, "This is Jeff Lee speaking." He said, "This is Tim Russell of the Atlanta Falcons." I went, "Okay, yeah." About that time, Buddy Childs was about 4'1". Buddy Childs walks in the door, and he says, "Is that them? Is that them?" And I said, "Buddy, what you talking about?" He said, "This is one of my buddies joking around with me." He says, "No, the Atlanta Falcons, I already talked to them." He said, "You can go. They're going to keep your job. I already talked to the board, superintendent, everybody. You're going to keep your job. You need to go." And I paused for a minute, and I said, "Is this really Tim Russell?" And And he said, yeah, he said, can you be up here? And that was in the morning. Can you be up here by 6? Because that's when all the police people leave up here because all that protesting. And I said, are you kidding me? And he said, all I can guarantee, Jeff, is $1,000. He said, they're cutting people left and right every day. And so we had 2-a-days for about a week. And every day they were cutting people. He was right, left and right. And it kept coming around and coming around. And I was calling the folks at Dodge County, I said, man, this is unbelievable. I mean, we're getting ready to play a game. It was Thursday, and doggone Saturday rolled around. And we're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'll never forget this. We're over there and we had been rotating people in and out so much because they were just trying to find the people that could possibly play. And I kept telling them, when we got in that shoot that day, and all the big old guys were getting down there, were going, they ain't been in no shoot, They played at the big boy schools, I knew how to come out of shoot from being from Georgia Southern. And I said, I got one chance. And Saturday morning rolls around, and I look up, and on the sideline, we're there at the old Swanee practice field. And Terry Bradshaw's come walking out. He was going to do the game on NBC, and he come walking. He's a big old joker. He's bigger than what I thought he was. And he's coming down the sideline. He's like, man, he said, this is great, man. I'm here shaking his hand and everything. I said, I called him Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. Bradshaw, it's a pleasure to meet you, And so that was quite a thing then. And so we're getting ready to leave that Saturday morning. They give you like a whole day off. You go do what you want to. You just got to be back at a certain time. And we were all staying there at the complex at the time. And the sports information guy calls these people out, and there were 2 Lees on the team. And Lee and Lisa, both of us stay. And he said, not you. He said, Jeff. And I said, okay. And so, man, they lined us up how they used to do, the old 5 guys, all the starters. And here you're at left guard. I've been practicing left guard. So you're left guard. And I get in there, man, and they took that headshot. And I said, what are their names? He said, well, you starting tomorrow. I said, oh, my gosh. And I went back to the time when, oh, good Lord, he said, look, dude, just wait your time. Your dreams will come true. You just wait your time. And sure enough, man, it did, and was able to be on the roster for 3 games. And the players said, they came back and they said, you know what, we need to come back because the owners have said they're going to finish with these guys. So they came back, and I think the next week we played at West Lawrence. So I went from Sunday, we went 0-2. We lost to Pittsburgh. I'll never forget Mike Webster was the center for the Steelers, and I ran across the field at the end of that game and shook his hand. He had no teeth in the front, man. I said, Mr. Webster, it was an honor to be on the same field with you, man. And we wound up coming from behind, and Eric Kramer was our quarterback. We wound up beating the Los Angeles Rams late in the game, and we went 1-2 then. And coaching against West Lawrence the next Friday night, and I felt like my whole dreams were fulfilled. And, I was getting to do finally, got to play finally a little bit more and all that. So back coaching at Dodge County. So I was having a good time.
That is awesome. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's a career right there. I mean,
it is. I tell you, people ask me, how was it to play against those guys? I said, man, it happens so fast. And that book, then they step in the huddle. It's not like, okay, right, 12, dive. Forget that. I mean, you're going all over and everywhere. And my head was spinning. I was used to Georgia Southern, they would just go 12. Well, that's inside of your right. 13, inside of your left.
10 or 11, check with me.
every word meant something to somebody. So you said, and a roommate played at Florida State, and James, and he told us, you just got to listen for the word that pertains to you. So I had to break down, okay, what word pertains to me? So it was fun though, man. It was.
That's awesome. So what did you do after Dodge County?
Well, Dodge County, I met my wife, and she got introduced. Catherine got introduced to high school football, and she had not been around it. And it was an introduction for her. She didn't get used to the folks yelling from the stands that we would all do it. All the coaches, we didn't know what we're doing. We're all doing it wrong. And that took some, she had to get some thick skin in a hurry. And so I married my wife, and we, she's been with me now for a long, she's done all these moves. I picked her up and moved her all these places. But sitting there, and Buddy Childs leaves. They bring in another coach, and he's going to keep me. I was able to stay on the staff. And so we didn't know really what we wanted to do. We know we wanted her to finish her degree. So right there in middle Georgia, she was going to be able to do that. And so that summer, we're working at Dodge County Park and Rec down there. I was the night supervisor, and so I'm in the middle with the 3 fields, just kind of watching what's going on. She's running a concession stand, flipping burgers, and we're trying to make a little bit of money. I go back to say, I know this is going out to a lot of guys and all, but guys, cherish the amount of money. I know it's relative, but my first paycheck back at Chester was $712 cash. That's what was in my pocket for doing all that work. And I thought I was rich. I really did. And it took me a while. I think the first head coaching job was, I didn't even get 4 digits in. I think it was the second one before I got 4 digits. So, cherish what you're doing now, because it was small things back then, small money. But I was standing into that one night. It was after July 4th. This man walks up to me, and he introduces himself. He said, "Hey, I'm Robert Carroll." And he said, "I just got the principal job at Charlton County, down in Folkston, Georgia. You know what that's at?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "I know what a swamp is, Okefenokee." And we used to go to Jacksonville on vacation, so we passed right through Folkston. He said, "You want to be a head football coach one day?" Well, I've been coaching for 2 years, I think, and 26 or whatever I was. And I said, "Yes, sir. Yeah. I mean, I want to be." And he says, "Well, if you'll be ready to go with me in the morning, we'll drive down 3 hours to Folkston, Georgia, and we'll talk about you being a head coach at Charlton County High School." And I said, "Holy cow!" I'll go and tell Catherine. And Mr. Carroll was from Eastman, but he had been gone for a while, and his family was real prominent in Eastman. And so, I mean, I knew who he was. And so get in the car. He comes by the house and picks me up, and we get down there. And on the way down, he says, "The job's yours if you want it." And that's a whole lot different than the way things are run now. And he said, "The job's yours. You're going to meet the superintendent. You're going to meet the board of education folks." He said, "John Marshall Peacock." And here goes those things about a lot of times, guys, it is who you know and who is in your life. And John Marshall Peacock from Eastman, Georgia, had offered me jobs, and it helped promote me and just been with me, been a real leader of my life too, and he knew my family, and to have a guy like that in my life was big. But he knew Robert, and he told him, he said, "Look, can you get this guy?" And so we go down, he offered his job, and we come back, and that was on a Wednesday, because we didn't have baseball games on Wednesday. So I told him, I said, "Can you get me through the weekend? I'm going to bring my wife down here. We're going to go to Jacksonville Beach and talk to those." So we went down, went to ate at their house. We stayed at the beach and everything, and drove back through. And so that's how I got the job at Folkston, Georgia, at Charlton County, and down in the swamp. And it was an awesome job. They were 0-10, I think, or 1-9 before we got there. And it was a great feeling. And Jesse Cruz was the AD there, is a great guy. And that's how I met Rich McWhorter. We kept Rich, and Rich has gone on and done a great job for himself. And he was my defensive coordinator, and I said, "Well, I want to run the 4-4." And he came to me and said, "Here's my 4-4 book." And I said, we looked at it over the weekend. I got back down there on Monday, and I said, "Man, let's run it. That's what we need." And we ran a variation of Georgia Southern, some flex bone and some wishbone stuff. But man, we had some great players. And Henry McMillan, I'll never forget Henry. Jesse drove me over to Henry's house. He said, "Look, you got to get this dude out." And he didn't play last year. So I got Henry. He says, "Coach, do you want a football team?" And I said, "Yeah, we got." He says, "I'll help you. Come meet." So I got him up, I think it was 7:00 next morning. We went door to door, finding guys that wanted to play or didn't play or that could play. And we had, well over 40 kids then. And that was an athletic team. We had a great young bunch. Ronald Bailey was my quarterback. That's Boston Champ's older brother. He went on to play at Georgia. Joe Hagens played at Purdue and played in Canadian League. Henry played at Florida, played at Seattle. It was a team that was loaded with a lot of guys. And to get my teeth cut down there, and we went 5-5, missed the playoffs. We lost to Clinch County late in the game, and that knocked us out of the playoff running. But we knew we had something special because we didn't have many seniors. And we thought we were going to be pretty good the following year. But I had this doggone itch to play more football. And I think what I was trying to do was play with all the famous coaches, play for all the famous coaches. So I had an agent back in the day, and he calls me up. Back then, the world, not worldly, but the NFL Europe was big. And, I was 27, just turned 27. And he said, "Hey, He said, I can get you over in the NFL Europe and so you got film on you and all that stuff. They want to see you. But in the meantime, you can go play in this team it's the minor league football system. And Macon, Georgia was going to have one. It's the Middle Georgia Heat Wave. And I went up and I said, I'll go try out. So I went up and tried out, and Lou Saban was going to be our head coach. And Lou Saban was the head coach of the Buffalo Bills when O.J. Simpson was playing. And he was our head coach, and they offered me a little contract there where you kind of they would get you a job or you would have to get a job. And so I had to go back there and tell the folks at Folston that, well, your head football coach is not leaving to another job. He's going to try to play more football. And that was tough. Jesse told me, he says, the job is yours until you pull out of Folston, out of Charlton County. And we loved it there. And that's one of the things for his regrets, for his coaching. Rich made the right move. They gave it to Rich, and that was the right move, and he did it well. And but anyway, go to Middle Georgia Heat Wave, and I got a job at Northside Junior High, 7, 8, 9. And we practiced in the summer, and we played late summer, early fall, and I could do all my coaching there. And I helped out with the Stan Gann was the head coach at Northside. Then I helped out when I could when I was in town, but we played and finished up in the fall playing. And I knew right then, Chris, after that first padded practice, and I drove back home and laid down. I told my wife, I don't know what I was thinking. I said, holy cow. I said, this game's passed me by. And played it. I enjoyed it, though. I really did. And that's when I met C.B. Cornett. And C.B. was our offensive line coach. And he stayed there with us, and then he got the job in Macon County. So we stayed there. The league folded, and I had a lot of great fun memories. I really did play in there. It was a lot of fun. And flying all over the nation, playing the game of football. And we played the Moscow Bears. They had a Russian team that came in. They smelled like vodka. We played. The guy I played against was a daggum Olympian shot putter, but he didn't know how to play very good football. But that was fun. That was good stuff. And so, but I knew then. I knew that. Then I said, I get back in coaching to get serious about this and let's move forward. So after my year at Northside, I got on at GMC High School as the head football coach. And that was really cutting some teeth, and I loved it. It's a military-based school. You only get who you get, and made the state playoffs there. We had the fortune to get Lincoln County in the draw, and Larry he was very nice to us that night. I tell you what, I thought you heard somebody else on here talk about the fans. I think it was at Lincoln about getting on. It might have been Coach Campbell getting on to them. We played them, and we weren't supposed to be on the field with them. Well, it was 14-0 at halftime, and so we're exiting the field over there, and the teams kind of go both ways. They didn't say a word to us. I said, guys, keep the helmets on. We passed right through them. But Lincoln was behind us, and all of a sudden the ruckus broke out, and they were all over their kids. Well, that made them mad. I think it wound up 40-0. So, but I love GMC. That was some fun times. My wife finished her degree there at Georgia College, and made a lot of lifetime friends. Every place we've gone, we've made. It's been one of the pluses is we've met so many people, and during that time, Westside Macon was coming. I'll tell you one more thing here. Westside Macon was coming up, and Raynette Evans, it was the 8 days. She calls me up, she's like, "Won't you come interview for this?" And so I go interview for it. Get through the first round. She said, "Hey, we're down to the final 3. You're in." I said, "Oh God, man, that's." She said, "Pick out colors, pick out whatever you want, and all that. So we got to have all that." So I go in, nothing unbeknownst to me, who all's in this thing. So I walk in, and I knew Robert Davis from back when my uncle was his friend, the best of buddies. I used to go over his house during the summer. So I knew who he was, and I played with a lot of his former players at Georgia Southern, and walk out, and it's Robert Davis coming out. And he says, "Hey, Jeff," he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm doing fine, Coach. How you?" And he said, "That was a good interview." He said, "Here's the questions you need to know." And I said, "Man, I appreciate that." I said, "You just interviewed with us?" "Oh my gosh." I said, "I'm in the national championship guy interviewing." So I walk out. So the third guy they had was Billy Henderson. So I walk out, and I talked to Coach Henderson for a while. I just sat there and absorbed that. I said, "Well, I'm going to talk to you for a little bit because I ain't never had a chance to talk to you." And so I was just an honor to be in the same boat, in the same opportunity with them. Of course, they gave it to Robert, and that's the best move he could have made, and he done great with it. And so, at GMC, thought I wanted to go to a bigger school. We left there, went to Hardaway in Columbus. And I had the great players such as Fred Drake, who's coaching now in Abbeville, Alabama, and Fred stays in contact with me to this day. And Hardaway was different. You talking about, it was that was the time, first time I've heard you say the Metro thing. It's the first time I'd heard, seen the recruiting deal. And because I've been in pretty much small schools, and I was pulling out of the drive one day at Hardaway High School, and this big dude was running down the road, and I pull up next to him. I sped up and pull up. Hey, buddy. I said, what grade are you in? Because I just got there. He said, I'm a junior. I said, oh. He said, you going to come to the meeting? He says, what meeting? And I said, the meeting we're going to have here at Hardaway at the, next week on the football. He said, oh, no. He says, I go to Columbus High School. I said, where do you live? You're going a long way off. He said, no, I live in that house right there, right across the street from Hardaway High School. I said, whoa, wait. I said, wait a minute. I said, you look that good. And he was a star. He went on to play college ball. Bobby Howard was a coach then at Columbus, and they were rolling then. And so next morning I go in and find out. And I said, yeah, they can go anywhere they want to. And he said, you got to get out there recruiting. I said, whoa, come on, man. If I want to recruit, I'd stay in college. And then the first person that called me when I got the job, congratulating me, was Charles Flowers. Charles Flowers was the head coach at Shaw, and he was raking them in at that time. He had several of our dudes over there. And Charlie let me know on the after I got there. He says, yeah, he said they can go pretty much where they want to go. So we were there 1 year, but we did meet some great people. And Fred was one of my dearest players, and he was on an undermanned team, and he played his heart out, and he did it wherever he could do to win. And but those guys, that was pretty neat learning that Metro, not really Metro, but going like, okay, there's some recruiting going on, and you either got to get with it or you're gonna have to get gone. And yeah, that was a fun year, learning experience.
So that's this is when I've already had Strick on. So this must be when y'all got together, and my mentor Stacy Bell, one of his best friends ever, his Teddy Shepard, Terry Shelton, and the crew. You get the whole crew together and start the program at Twiggs County.
What happened was the phone rang one day, and we had a landline. We had no cell phones. I think we had a bag phone. I think we had a bag phone. We had a cell phone. Phone at the house. Charles Lundy was the principal at Twiggs County, and he says, "Do you know anything about Jefferson?" He was from Cochran. He said, "I know you from Eastman." He said, "Do you know anything about Twiggs County?" I said, "Well, I know where it's at. It's right in the middle of the state." He said, "Geographical middle of the state." He says, "We're trying to start football down here. They don't know how we do it. Would you want to do it?" And I said, he said, "I know you did it at Georgia Southern." I said, "But this is different. You being a coach, So I'll go over and look at it. And the funny thing about Twiggs is they had a brand new school. They had two fields. They had one out there with goalposts on it, which was going to be the game field. It was just grass and two goalposts. They had another on the track, goalpost, with a practice field inside of it. And I told him we'd take the job. And Lonnie Ford, Tony Hollins Sr., Mr. Harris, they sold chicken. We sold chicken sandwiches to raise money. And they told them X amount of money to raise. If you raise this, then you can move forward with football. And so they did, and we got that money up there. And we started from ground zero. I went and begged and borrowed for weights, and had enough nice people to give us some of their old stuff they were about to throw away. And we used that. We lived it outside for a long time. We used a double door garage out there until we got us a weight room inside. They went all in with the weight room, what we asked them to do. But I got us a great staff there, man. Jason came on, Strickland, and he has done extremely well. And Jason came on young and was actually trying to finish his teaching certificate back then. And then Terry Shelton, Rusty Sowell, Ted Bellflower, they let me hire who we needed to hire, good people. And they had never had a down of football ever there. And so we got there and hit the ground running. And I was blessed with some really good athletes. Tony Hollins wound up being, he was in the 8th grade when I got there, wound up being our starting quarterback, wound up playing at Georgia Tech and playing for the Houston Texans, and just a phenomenal athlete. And there was a bunch of them. Cedric James, Kojak, he wound up playing at Buffalo in the Canadian League. And so we had a lot of talent there, but they had never played a down of football. And so one of the stories about getting that thing started, we were having a passing league. I think it's our second year there. We're having a passing league game and 7-on-7. And at the school he called, and the guy says, look, man, it's 4th of July week. I'm going on vacation. I'm sorry I canceled. Well, he forgot to tell his assistant coaches. So we're there early, and I told my guys, I said, look, I think it was Tuesday. I said, I'll tell you what, guys. I said, y'all take the rest of the week off. It's 4th of July. Y'all take the rest of the week off, and, we'll get back after it next week. And then they said, Coach, I thought we had a 7-on-7 game. And they said, well, we did, but the team's not coming. Well, lo and behold, they started leaving. Most of them rode bikes or walked or carpooled in Jeffersonville. And so, lo and behold, the bus pulls up. Coach gets out, defense coordinates. Coach, and I said, your coach called, said y'all he was going on vacation. Yeah, well, he went on vacation. He forgot to tell us to cancel. So I went and called just to make sure he knew they were on that phone. I called him, and he said, oh, yeah, they're there. I said, well, he asked me, could he go practice? I said, yeah, go practice on the field out there. That's fine. I'll be here for. I'll wash him some shorts and all that. And he got out there, and the kid saw me. He said, Coach, they're here. And I said, yeah, but y'all don't worry about it. These guys went through the whole town of Jeffersonville and got everybody back. We had more that were not at workouts that were there for the 7-on-7 that didn't even come to the workout that day. So, and that was just a kid they were, man. The facilities were nothing. I'll never forget Mr. Kiley, the superintendent. He came to me and he says, tell Mr. Lundy that get your class covered. We're going to be gone for a while. I said, okay. So he drives me around the county, and he drives me up to this old abandoned school, and he says, this is going to be your field house. So we're going to move the stadium over here. And he said, no. He said, I got a company that'll come in and diamond cut an old building, 25-foot section, jack them up, put on the trailer, and you go settle down and just build structure around them. So we went through and measured everything. And Chris, we built that facility that's there based on an old building. It took them about 1.5 years to do it. But they claim they sold them $1 million. I don't know if they did or not, but I'll tell you one quick story about Ted and Jason. I don't know if Jason was there. I know Terry was with us. We didn't have mowers. So they bought us 3 K-Grow lawnmowers. Well, them K-Grow lawnmowers are the doggone ones that Kmart had. So we started in the middle of the field, and then you had the other mower back up and put his front tire on your rear tire. And the other guy put his front tire on the other guy's rear tire. And you just cut the grass and blew it all through the side that way. And you just kept making a circle around the field. And but finally they got us a new mower and all that stuff. And they made a big thing. And then football took off. We, unfortunately, our third year made the state playoffs. I had to play Charles Grant and down there. And he put a whipping on us. And but it was a special time. And I'd interviewed at Jones County the year before. And we moved to Jones County. We're living there. My wife was working there in the county, and John Trimble was the principal there at Jones County, and they went 0-20 2 years in a row, and 0-10. He called me up and says, "Look, I know what you want, I know what you need." He said, "You just meet me here on Saturday morning." He said, "The job's going to be yours if you want it." But we had just played 2 years ago. We played their JV, and we spanked them pretty good. I was going, wait a minute now, a little single A team that come up here and whipped you with some boys that didn't know how to play football, and so. We thought about it, but my wife and my son then was in school there. And so I was driving from outside of Gray there all the way to Jeffersonville 3 years. And we decided to make that move. And it was another great move. And I hated leaving Twig Jason. I taught Jason to come in with me. And Teddy B stayed behind, and him and Shelton, they stayed behind, and they had some success there. And I got Jason. I got lucky, and Jason came with me up to Jones County. And I told him the first day, I said, dude, now we're inheriting 0-28. This ain't going to be easy now. And doggone if we didn't go 4-6 the first year, and we won. We beat Henry County in the first game, and you thought we'd have won the Super Bowl. It was phenomenal, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun there.
So how long were you at Jones County?
We were there 4 years. We made we won at the time, we won the only region championship that they had ever won. And another quick story, I got a bunch of them. I ain't gonna get to all of them. The day we're playing the region championship game, we're playing Westlake, and they had Pac-Man Jones. If you watch NFL, I don't know if he might still play. I don't think he is, but he played for a long time in the NFL. But he was that type of guy. The week before that, I had a quarterback by the name of Justin Tyler, one of the best players I've ever had. Justin went on to Mississippi State for baseball and football and wound up back at GMC. But we were playing at Creekside, and Amos McCray was the head coach over there. They hadn't lost a game in 7 years at home. And we go in up there, and it's one of those things where The guy knows the offense. He knows it behind almost better than I do. So we're down 13 points in the fourth quarter, and I come to him and said, Justin, what do you think is going to work? And he looked at me and says, Coach, if we get in doubles, he said, put Floyd Patterson in the middle. And he said, Andrew Belcher, they won't be able to defend him. We'd already been in that set before, but I had those two guys wrong. And so we put them in there. I said, take it. So I let him and Chuck Gibson kind of navigate that thing down the field, get out of the way, let athletes play. We score, go for two, win the game. And first time Creekside had beat, well, that 7 years, that has set up the region championship for Westlake at our place. And the day of the game, Mr. Trimble comes in and he has two trophies. And they're two driver's ed trophies. They're region championship trophies, but they're driver's ed trophies. And he said, guys, I want y'all to understand something. Driver's ed has more region championships than football. Football has 0. And man, the game was over. We were going to win regardless. Them old trophies, I took them in. They were all broken down. But we wind up, same thing happened there. Westlake was kicking our rear end. And, you sort of like want to remember the Titans when coach looks at the head coach and he goes, he says, hey, I need your help. And so it took all of us that night, every one of us, Bubba Williams, Bill Young, all of us that night, Jeff Ward. And we came from behind and won that thing. And we go for two to win the thing and win the only region championship Jones County had ever won until that day. Now, since they have done on, and facilities are awesome, and they've won a lot since then. But just a phenomenal. I mean, that was unbelievable feeling. Storming the field and till this day, that was so special to be able to do that for those people in Jones County and Gray.
We almost have really pissed him off because I was at Burke County then, and Pac-Man went off on us when we played in the second round, and we were like,
yeah.
And that was when Shaw had won the year before, and they got upset by Crisp, and we were like, and we knew it, and we were like, all right, if we can beat Westlake, we're gonna go to the Final Four, and we're gonna be playing Cordele because we'll beat them.
Yeah,
and we're gonna go to the Final Four, and then we screwed around and lost to Pac-Man, beat us because we couldn't deal with him.
He was phenomenal. I think he's still running out there today. I really do. You watch that film and you go out there, holy cow! How did we tackle that dude? We tackled him one time, Chris, and that was the time that won the game.
Yeah.
And one of our best players tackled him in the open field, made a great form tackle, last play of the game, and. Yeah, and after that, we thought we were in the driver's seat. We made it to the quarters that year, and I met up against a team called Troup County. They were rolling, man. Holy cow, they rolling back then.
Yeah, and DT was there.
Yep. Yeah, he was. He showed. So you must have been at Burke then before, because the year before we lost to Burke in the playoffs then.
Yeah, I was at Burke with Nick and Franklin Stevens and that bunch in 01.
Yep. That was the year we went. That was the year. It rained so hard. We lost like a 3-point game, I think it was.
Because I started at Worth with Bobby Mack in 0.
Yeah.
And we played Cairo, and then we played Shaw in the first round. And then Cairo and Shaw played that 3-2 game that year in the Dome.
I remember that.
Yep. And then the next year I was at Burke. Yep. And so then you left Jones and went to the to the mountains.
To the hills, yeah. We didn't have to. We really didn't. I mean, we had it going, and we had a rough year that year before because we graduated all the seniors that had been with us before. And I'll tell you one more story about kids. Justin Tyler, I think it was his junior year. We're doing a 7-on-7. And this is the type of kids that you get when you pour into them and you trust them and they trust you and they believe in what you're doing. And Justin came in we were going, I think it was a 2-day event. It was a Thursday night. I think we were going up to Jackson High School to throw. And Justin comes walking in there to our training room and he's limping a little bit. He's got flip-flops on. I said, oh, boy, you ready to go? And he said, yes, sir. He said he was late. He's never late. He's always first throwing the ball. He said, yes, sir. He said, but I got it. Lindsay's mom was with him. And our trainer was there. Doc was there. And I said, Doc, what you got with there? And he looked at it and he goes, He had, like, he's on a boat. They go boating. And so he's boating, but he's coming up to the dock and he puts his foot out. You know those T-ties that you tie off the boat with on the dock? He put his foot up on the front and his big toe and the next toe just opened up. And that doggone thing inserted in between his big old toe and his next toe. No blood whatsoever. but you could see all the way in there. And I said, you going to be able to play on that? And he said, Coach, I'm playing. And the doc looked and said, it's up to him. It's not bleeding. He didn't get anything structurally damaged. And so he had a hole in the middle of his toe there, foot. And I think we won both those passing games that night. But that was a tight kid we had there, that was going to run through the wall for us. Ather Brown played at Georgia Tech, helped turn that program around. And those coaches, like I said, Bill Young and Bubba Williams and Jason was there. Like Jason said, I told him, I said, look, stay one more year. Just stay one more year. And he said, no, I think this is it. We had another story on Jason. He was there, but his wife, his former wife, she was a student teacher with my wife in elementary school. And so my wife said, I think we're going to get them together. So they met and started dating, and the rest is history, I guess. So
then y'all head to the hills.
We head to the hills. We go to Dawson County in Dawsonville, Georgia. We were there 12 years. That's where my kids graduated high school from. And still to this day, that's one of the reasons we came back into this area where we're at right now. And I had some great.
Got to hang out with Awesome Bill.
I did, yeah. Well, actually, his son, was training and trying to make it to the he was on the go-kart series. Well, he signed a contract, and now he's going to be running whatever that smaller series is up in Charlotte. Well, they sent him a workout. Well, he was homeschooled, so he comes up to us one day, and some of my coaches there, local coaches, knew him, and he said, Chase needs to work out. And he said, here's his workout. You think he can come in here before y'all lift? I looked right at it. Doggone, they had him doing the same things we were doing, deadlift, power clean, squat, bench. I said, actually, Chase, you can do this stuff with us. You just do your thing, And so he wound up doing that for a little while with us, and then he got big time. But, yeah, Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. That was a fun time, man. And we turned the program around and had great administrators, man. Rick Brown hired me, Dr. Juke Wilson, who's superintendent now at Lamar County Schools, and then Richard Crumley was the principal on my way out there. Still to this day, man, the contacts we made with those guys, the players, Chad Cunningham played at Tennessee, was our quarterback punter. The Walls boys, Lance and Logan, all played at Georgia Tech. Bruce Clark, I think he's coaching down there right now in Appleton County, and Zach Martin's coaching over there in Pickens. Those guys were just, phenomenal players that would believe in everything we were doing. And it was good to see that program grow and transform like it did. But it was tough now. They put us in there with Buford, GAC, and Weston back in the heyday. And so all the mountain schools were playing for fourth place. That was a hard one.
And that's where you retired? I
did, yeah. Yeah, we did 30. I told my wife, I said, when we do 30, we're going to go out of state. So we looked everywhere, and we got lucky. I found a place down in Panama City. North Bay Haven Charter had a football team for 2 years. They'd gone 0-20. And through connections, through Phil Lanford, who was my head offensive line coach in high school, lives in Mexico Beach, and he knew somebody there. And he says, I called him up and said, I'm looking for something in Florida. And he said, well, here's a name to call this name. We did. Dr. Tim Kitts was the CEO there and got us all started, gave me what we needed, and we turned that thing around. My first year was horrible. I had one senior, and we started 18 freshmen, and we knew we were going to be pretty good. Well, 3 years later, the only time they made the state playoffs ever, still this day, is as we made it and we won, and that was sweet in itself, And had Aaron York, who's the head coach over in Mississippi now. He was the great defensive coordinator. Just a phenomenal coach. But that was fun. And so that led me to hopefully, I'll tell you what, Chris, we went to the state playoffs and we played Raines High School. And that was not a blessing to play Raines High School because if you know anything about football down in Florida, Raines is unbelievable. They turn them out left and right. And I think that night we played them, they were retiring 2 jerseys of 2 guys that were NFL Hall of Famers. So that was pretty unique. But I got a call. We lived in North Bay County. I got a call to go talk to folks at Holmes County in Florida, right up the road in Bonifay. I went up and I turned it down the first time. I said, no, this is just as good as what I got. And they called me back, come talk to us. And so we went in and talked, and we got it all ironed out. So I took that job. I was there for 4 years. And so something's real unique about Holmes County. we play in a rodeo arena. Okay, the stadium is there. And that's not unique in itself that most people have the rodeos. They come after every year after the football season. Well, not this one. This one's held smack dab in the middle of your football season, and you got to vacate for 2 weeks. And they come in and do a rodeo on all that field you worked on, cutting grass and getting it growing. And they do a rodeo. And you come back a week later and play on dirt and cow manure and horseshoes and everything else, man. So that's a very unique place. Everybody talks about, well, we got this right here. We're the only one in America where I promise you that whole rodeo is held during the season. And but that was unique in itself. That made us unique, and we took pride in that. We found that to build on, and for our kids. And
that's where you coach Bill Dance.
Bill Dance, yes, sir. My story on Bill Dance. We talk about COVID. Everybody talks about COVID being creative. In Florida, in COVID, Chris, they told us, they said, well, you can't have more than 10 in a room at one time. And we said, okay, all right, but you can have as many outside as you want. I said, all right. Well, the way our school was set up, the double doors opened up, and it was a pavilion, a long, like parking for the sidewalk for the kids to stand under for the buses. And I walked down one day, I was sitting there, the sun was coming out. I said, why can't we just move everything right here? So we had our leadership groups come in, open up the weight room at 7. They took 30 minutes to set everything up that we needed that day. And we lifted from 7:30 to about 9, and we did speed 7-on-7 practice. We never missed a beat. And so that was one creative way that we got around them saying, hey, you can have everything outside. We didn't have to worry about it. And but yeah, Bill Dance, I try to remember kids' names by nicknames, by something they do in a weight room or do something and just give them a nickname. And I like to throw out old names. And this during COVID, this young man walks up to us. His name was Traven Sassett. And Traven walks up to me and said, hey, coach, I'm going to play football. And I said, okay, you ever played for us? No, sir. Never watched it, never played it. No, haven't. I said, okay, well, you come at the right time. But I love to move things, lift things. I said, all right, we're starting to lift weights. So we're in there lifting. And he had a cap on with some hooks on it, fishing hooks. And I said, you know, I couldn't remember his last name. That's what I couldn't remember. It was Sassett. I couldn't remember that, though. And I said, you know Bill Dance? And he goes, no, sir, no, I don't know. I said, go home and look him up. So next morning he comes back with his dad. His daddy gets out of the truck. They come over there and he goes, my son tells me you got him a nickname. And I said, okay, how's this going to go? I was just jovial, And he says, that's a mighty fine nickname you gave my boy. And he said, he's proud of that. He went home and watched it. He said, he loves it. so from that day on, Traven's family went to the game. And we were blue, but on the back of his jersey, he was number 77. On the back of their T-shirts, they had Bill Dance written across it, and that stayed with him forever. Still, this day, he'll text me, "Hey, this is Bill." And I'm going, "Wait a minute now, Bill." Okay, Traven, I'm sorry. That was. I'll tell you, man, Chris, that was fun. Florida's different. Bill Thomas was one of the guys down there. Bo Johnson, I know you talked to Bo.
Oh yeah,
Bo was at Bluntstown. And, he can tell you about Holmes County, but we had a great time. I mean, those kids till this day and those people down there. And I told my wife, I said, we've moved so much. I know. And you sit back and realize as you get down here, you go like to the end, you go, we've met so many people. We have friendships all over the place. And, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong to stay in one house forever, but we sure have enjoyed it. It's been a task sometimes. We've enjoyed it.
So after Holmes County, is that when you took on the challenge of where you are now?
Right. What happened, my mother passed away and her mother passed away all within a month. And we said, you know what, what's serious? Let's go find us a place. So we both got enough retirement in Florida, and we came up to Richard Crumley, who was my outgoing principal at Dawson, was the principal headmaster at Riverside Military. And he reached out to me and said, I heard you trying to get back up in these woods up here. And I said, well, I am trying to get back. I'm trying to look to be an assistant coach or something. I still want to do this thing. And he said, how about head coach? And I went, whoa. I said, okay, all right, where at? He said, Riverside. I went, okay. So I looked them up, and we've still lost for whatever we are right now, but they had lost like 2 or 3 years in a row. And I'll tell you a backstory on that real quick. And I said, yeah. He said, that's different. This is a different place. He said, but it can be good. Back in the day now, Riverside was the deal. They had 500 kids. They had 300 kids on this campus. And before COVID, they were rolling. I mean, we got Khalil Duke playing for the Titans. He played before COVID. When COVID hit, they sent them home, shut school down, and it's been a tough road to recover. But we're starting to make headway, and we're starting to get those kids back in the building. And I mean, right now we're looking projected at 225, 250 by the end of the year next year, and that's kind of well on the way of where they want to get a sustainable number. But man, it's different now, buddy. I got so many stories already here. I've been here 1 year. Real quick, these guys come from all over the place. And you say, well, that's great. No, we're not like Raven Gap and those guys. They come here, they have a military portion that they got to do. There's no question about that. They all have to wear a uniform. They march, they drill. They actually do drill for an hour and a half on game day on Friday before I ever get them. And so they're in fatigues. And so it is different. You got to maneuver. It makes you a better coach, I think, by maneuvering those things, learning those things. But these guys came in this year, and I said, I'm pulling everybody I can. And this guy, big guy, comes in the hallway. He's a boxer, a teenage boxer from Kazakhstan. And he speaks a little bit of English, and he's coming down the hallway. And I grabbed him and said, you play football? And he says, oh, shakes his hands like he doesn't understand. I said, American football. You play American football? He goes, I don't understand. I said, come with me. So he comes and we get him fit up. Never put a helmet on his life. This dude's from Kazakhstan playing nose tackle for us, and he ain't played a down of football ever in his life. And so we get them from all over the place, and that makes it a joy and fun. But yeah, that's what we're doing here. We're trying to be. We're gonna be better. We're gonna be better. But it is a special place. I know I sent you a photo or so. When
oh yeah,
we go to
that's
lunch.
awesome.
Hey, when we go to lunch, we got to march to lunch.
Yeah, I enjoy getting those pictures. You send them to me. You're like, you got this going on. I'm like, oh, that's a hot negative. we don't look like, we can't even make anything that remotely looks like anything. Yeah. I had one the other day ask me who did I Have a Dream speech, and she said, don't tell me. His name was George, and I was like, Jefferson. She was like, no, it was George. Don't tell me. And the other teacher in there was like, girl, just don't say nothing else. And I'm just sitting there looking at her like, really? And this child's like serious. She's like, no, it was George Foreman. And I was like, really? Arguably one of the three most influential Americans in the history of ever. And you come up with George Foreman?
Yeah.
And my wife said, y'all have failed these children. I said, y'all ain't, no, this is a parent problem. This is not a Coach Lamb problem. No. We're not putting this on me. I mean, this is a 16-year-old African-American child who comes up with George Foreman. That ain't my fault. I'm sorry. I'm looking at these kids, and you're sending me pictures of kids marching around in uniforms going to, and we can't figure out who wrote the I Have a Dream speech. No, we ain't even close, dog. We're not even in the same planet.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Chris, the first time I saw that, it was a parade, and they dress, and that's their daily stuff. They got 3 different uniforms we wear. But when they put that parade stuff on, the gray and the tall hats and the white pants, man, and they do that march and they play that music, man, that gets me. Man, my father-in-law was in the military, and he was proud of it, and had other relatives that were in the military. Man, that tugs on you, buddy, when the first time you see it. And then we get a kid that, like I said, has never played a down football, but he wants to be a part of that. And I'll tell you what, we're head and heels over where we were last year at this time. We made a commitment to the weight room and the speed program, and it has really, really worked.
So you're dealing with that, and I have a kid today go, hey, did you hear the Pope died last week? I'm like, yeah. He died on Easter. Yeah. That's awful. And I went, yeah. Do we have a Pope in the United States? No, baby, we don't. There's just one.
There's just one.
I think Jesus is coming back when the Pope dies. Well, baby, there's been about 5 or 6 popes since I've been alive. They're going to vote and have another one. If he comes back, he comes back, but this ain't one of the signs. I'm dealing with that while you're out there with Kazakhstan and tin huts. And I know you've been in the other places too, but and that's cool that at this point in your career, you're getting to experience a totally different thing. And it's just so awesome that over your 40 plus years, you've poured into these kids all over the place, and just amazing story of all the places your career's taken you and all the people you've met. And I'm just so glad that you came on with me tonight to share all of that with us. I mean, what an amazing story.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you even thanking me. I mean, all the names that you had on here, and everybody says, there's a guy for every job, and so I fit that bill. I think we've taken some, and just the friendships. I mean, that alone, and being able to associate with kids and see them blossom and grow, and they pick the phone up and they call you, and it's just been a joy. It really has. And coming from that track you're gonna see at Dodge County. Okay, at the old high school there, let me tell you something. That was a clay track at one time, and the whole track meets, we didn't paint it, we chalked it for lines. So you about to see some things that are totally changed down there. But I really do appreciate you giving me this opportunity. And got a lot of coaching buddies out there that I listen to this thing, and I heard them on here. And it gets kind of teary-eyed sometimes when you hear him say, man, I remember when he just started, and look at him now. So I'm proud of that. But I really do appreciate you, Chris, allowing me this opportunity, man.
Thank you.